Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, all directors are present and accounted for. We will start out with public comment. I don't know if anyone or everyone got a hold of the sign-in sheet, but we don't have too many people, so we'll go ahead and go ahead and just open it up for public comment. Anyone can raise their hand since we don't have sign-ins, and then if you'd like to report at the podium and just give your name and address or city you live in, and then start your public comment.
Well, I guess I'll go if nobody else is going.
Okay, I saw a hand back there. We'll start with you first.
My name is John Globey. I live at 33975 Northeast Crop Creek Road.
Can you make sure the mics are on, please?
It's on, Richard. Oh, okay, well, my property borders the Rilee Park. And I was on the committee years ago, the Citizens Advisory Committee years ago, and the recommendations that we made at the time were wish lists more than anything else. And none of them have come really to fruition. The issue I was concerned with, and still am concerned with, is security and safety and accountability of the people using the park. And the fundamental problem is the CPRD has no way of knowing who's using it, when they're using it, how often they use it, and what they use it for. And this is on the heels of, in those days, it was on the heels of that issue where a bunch of teenagers threw firecrackers in the gorge and burned half the gorge. That same thing can happen here if there's no control and no accountability. There is no accountability for anybody walking around there. And one of my issues, of course, is that borders my property. The property line has become very vague. In fact, it's not even defined. There are places where the trail that parallels the property line is right on the property line, and there are places where it's deep in the park, and there are places where it's on my property. It's not a huge issue, but it's an issue about the users. I mean, I've had people wander into my yard because they've gotten off the trails, and they're not, they just aren't defined, and the property's not defined. So I would advise that there be some method for determining, one, where the property is, and two, who's using it, what they're using it for, and how often they're using it. I mean, how do you do a cost-benefit analysis? I see in this draft plan they could spend up $1 million, close to $1 million for horse trails. And is there any data at all to support how many people that is actually benefiting versus, we know who's paying the bill. It's costing every taxpayer for CPRD. But the people who benefit from it are of an unknown number. Now, every meeting I've been to, the equestrian people are very, very eager. They're very vocal. And based on just volume, you would think there's hundreds of them out there using it. But does anybody know? Does anybody know? No, you don't. And so that leaves the owner of property around the park, which when I was on this committee, there were 22 different landowners that bordered the Rilee Park. I think that's changed now. But at any rate, how do you defend them from possible encroachment or trespass? And I think that's an issue that needs to be done, and it should be addressed in your plan, because how do you manage something if you don't know who you're managing it for, how many people you're managing it for? And then in the plan, there's no discussion about the funding of these improvements. And the improvements total up to well over $1 million, but there's no plan or no discussion about how it'll be funded. usually plans include some type of financial analysis on where the money's coming from. Is it gonna come from fees? Is it gonna come from a bond issue? Is it gonna just come out of a budgeted, an unknown budget, or a CPRD budget? That's not even addressed in the master plan. So I think those two things, and then we had a little discussion earlier about enforcement of rules, and that's like a daily problem. But the, well, that's what I wanted to say. Also, there was one other thing. This Chehalem Trail Committee, did they submit a recommendation or a report? Because I've never seen anything. Tried to go to one of their meetings and it was canceled. And so I've never even been able to address them or talk to those people. But did they ever submit a report or an opinion regarding this draft plan? And if they did, what were their comments? I mean, did they add, subtract? I mean, this is a committee you set up, supposedly of public people, to give the directors an idea of what the public really wants. And if they're not listened to, or if they don't submit reports, what is their function? Okay, I've said what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? Who would like to provide comment?
You wanna go, Matt? You're,
Sure. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Matt Dolphin. I am a district resident. Also, I am Vice President of Field Services for the Oregon Equestrian Trails. I'm on their state board. We take care of horse trails throughout the state, have about 700 members, 12 chapters, reaching all the way across the state, and do some really great work. We do a lot of work with bikes and horses, trails that are used for multiple uses. But I don't speak for that organization here tonight. I come really wanting answers to 3 questions during this meeting. The first is, the current board wants to keep bicycles out of this park. What design features have been added to make the park unsuitable or undesirable for bicyclists beyond no bike signs? The second question, if in the future the board wants to allow bicycles at the park, what changes would be necessary beyond changing signage to make the park suitable for bicyclists? And the third question, getting to John's point, the board has legislative powers to adopt, amend, or repeal rules and regulations as described in Oregon Revised Statute number 266.450. Why hasn't the board exercised these powers and passed an amendment to park rules and regulations formalizing its desire to ban bicycles from the park and allow horses? Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd like to, if no one else is
Okay,
gonna speak.
go ahead.
Do I need to go to the podium?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Hi, I'm Ryan Reinhofer. I live on the park, and I was under the impression that this was a Crystal Rilee meeting on how to expand upon and aid the park in development and formalizing the master plan. Since it is horses and hikers, I and myself and Dana and Lauren have recently formed a 501c3, and in the last couple weeks of active donations, we've come up with $25,000 that we would like to work with and in conjunction and help CPRD to do improvements for signage, for trails, for obstacles, for fencing, for whatever's needed to expand upon the use for hikers and horses. And I just wanted to put that in front of you all and see if there's a way that we could fold that into the master plan. I know a lot of the horse people and the feedback, as well as in the documents that you have, are wanting better signage. A lot of people don't know that there's multiple parking lots, or parking lots are for trailers, or parking lots are for cars, and expanding upon that. I had the privilege of running into about 15 police officers last night while I was riding, that they were unaware of the park till recently, and were just ecstatic and wanting to help, and had recently lost their arenas and areas to practice their mounted police, their posse, their canine, their SWAT. And since yesterday, the unit director has emailed me twice asking, hey, where do I donate? What can I do? I think that's a huge resource that would serve some of John's concerns. Having more police presence in the park, I think, is not a bad thing, and they would like to be there. And they're hikers, and this one last night actually happened to be an equestrian as well. And that was basically my point of, there are a lot of people that want to use the park for horses in different facets, as well as hikers, and they're willing to put the time, energy, and money. We also have a grant application out from the Austin family, who are also equestrians, that we would like to utilize all the funds, resources, and momentum to help the park in any way we can with the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, if you
want to speak.
got this just in time, if you'd like to do public comment.
Sorry, I was doing chores, running around, I'm a bit hot, sweaty.
Name and address if you can.
Blanche Cole, live on Rising Star Lane, up on Cramion.
Okay.
I've imported probably about 35 gypsy horses. I have a breeding program. I currently have a stock of about 40. I rode in the park probably like 8 years ago, I think, before it really took shape. And I recently just started riding there a few weeks ago, and it was like, ha ha. I had no idea this was in our backyard, and it's amazing. And so for me, I pony horses, my young stock, and we're there, the community, people see the horses, and I don't know if they're a draft type, they have the fluffy feet, and they're pretty cool. They're like the golden retriever of the horse world. They're a really neat, special horse. And I've been getting people there to ride and get involved with this, and it's a very special place, and would love to see it, because there's nothing really close by. If I want to take my horses out to do stuff and expose them to things, I have to go out to McIver, which is about an hour haul. They're, each way, and it's a beautiful asset, and I think it is a really important asset to this area and this community. So, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Tamara Bush Johnson. I live on Lat Hill Road, and Clackamas. And years ago, I used to ride from my house on Lat Hill, believe it or not, drop down behind the mountain and connected to Crystal's place. And so I've ridden there for many, many years. But just top priorities are good signage. I do believe, I forget the gentleman's name who talked about, he showed a slideshow on the different signage that you can have, a red trail, blue trail, for in case there is an emergency up there, that you can say, we're at the corner of the red trail and the blue trail, so that they could find someone easily. So I think, that's got to be a top priority of good signage on the trail, so people are not getting lost, getting on private properties or anything that they stay on it, and I think that's key. And then also parking, just to really better understand the parking for big rigs when they come in. And so that no one is going on property again that they should not be on. And then security, some type of security, camera security, something that who is up there. We have just begun to really let people know of this wonderful, rich resource that we have in this state. Clackamas County is one of the largest equestrian populations in the whole state. And people are just discovering it, So once, we can really, do some of the improvements, get things set, have a plan, We will really help spread the word, do fundraisers, whatever we have to do to help support the efforts and to join as a partnership with you folks. So thank you.
Hi, Lauren Pfeiffer. I live on Parrot Mountain Road, not far from the park. And I want to just reiterate a couple things. So I've been riding the park a lot since it's been opened, and the last couple years as well. But the thing that's been great this year, and I think is an outcome of all this discussion, is that there's been so many new riders there. So many new riders. And every time we run into somebody, they're like, this is amazing. You know, we can't believe, like Blanche, can't believe that this is here in our backyard and we haven't been able to, or we didn't know about it, right? We haven't been able to ride. And it's been great to see a bunch of new riders. And the other thing is that there's been a lot of new hikers. And every time I run into the hikers, every time we meet up with the hikers on the trail, every single time they are really excited to see the horses. And we visit and they ask about the horses and they ask about the park. And I have never in the last couple of years had any situation where the hikers have not been happy to see the horses and engaged with the horses. And I think it's a good example of how we are, hikers and horses, able to share all the trails. So just wanted to mention that.
So you mentioned there's a lot more equestrians up there. What is the reason for that?
I think it's because we're all talking about it now, you know, as a result of the last couple months or the last year. I think, Matt, really is that we're getting the word out because as an equestrian, we don't want to lose it and we want to make sure that everybody knows that it's there and that they can come enjoy it too. For those, even people right around the corner didn't know that it was available, or maybe we're there, you know, 8 years ago and the footing was bad and they haven't been back. And so we've just been talking about it, I think, and the word has spread very quickly and it's been great to see all the new riders.
A lot of breed clubs now are
Yeah.
sponsoring rides up there.
Yeah.
You know, the Tennessee walking horses.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Gated Arabians, yeah.
Yeah, and people, the Tennessee Walkers drove from Albany to come check it out. So, it's been great.
Hi, I'm Keena Ramsey. I'm actually out of district. I live down in Wilsonville near Costco, but I was really excited when I found out the park was open way back in 2013. So I've been riding there quite a bit since then. It's the closest place for anybody in the Wilsonville, Tualatin, Sherwood, Newburgh area to ride your horse. The same thing has happened. It's been really interesting. I belong to Valley View Riders. We had a meeting last night. People were asking me about it. I said, well, can you show me around? And one of the things that they're really excited about is the fact that we can go on the east side now, because I actually owned 5 horses. 2 of them are rescues. 2 of them are kind of broken, but they're all old. And so it's easier on their joints because it's more of a gradual, I can't go down on the steep pitches anymore with them. Their joints just aren't very good. But I think that's another thing, we're getting the people back that used to ride the east side. And I probably had 10 people say, when are you gonna take us on a ride up there? So I think it's really true that it makes it more desirable when you have a little more terrain, a little more varied terrain. And it's just been wonderful. The one thing that I would like to suggest is where we have the crossover from east to west side, that we get some signage, because sometimes the cars are going pretty fast, and I've been walking my horse across. I don't ride him across because I think it's safer. Harder for the old person to get on, but that's just a suggestion I have. And then I know there was some discussion about whether, you know, cars should be up there, horse trailers. And again, I think it's a safety issue too. There was some different places have tried to designate that because some people don't know, or they're scared of horses, or they don't want to be around them, or small children. But back to your issue of who comes there, one thing we did at Tryon Creek, because we were trying to figure out who comes when even, it had to be a volunteer, but we just had a little like a little box that you opened up and you took it out and you wrote your name and, you know, you could do it whether you're on a horse or you were hiking or you're dog walking or whatever, and we collected data. We did that for 2 years. So that's one way, it'd be volunteer, but it would be a way to start collecting data anyway. So I don't know if those are any good ideas or not, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. So discussion time. I don't know, the preferred format, you're here with, is it MV5?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to maybe just kind of start us off with just a little bit of the background, some of your highlights, and then I'm sure we'll come in with some questions and thoughts and more questions, so, yeah.
Yeah, my pleasure. My name's John Champlin. I'm a landscape architect with NV5. We've been on this project for about a year now. Previously to this last stint, this contract, we completed an environmental assessment of the property back in 2016. It was kind of, I think, the Park District's first step after the property was acquired, and I think the acquisition finalized in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, to do the environmental assessment. And that impacted the master planning effort in terms of knowing what's there and how to use the property. I know the advisory committee was formulated in 2019. We took some of the recommendations from there. As John mentioned, it was a bit of a wish list, and that was considered. And then moving beyond that, the Park District had an intern complete a trail mapping exercise, and that heavily impacted our design as well. Obviously, everybody who's been up there knows there's a lot of existing trails, and that factored into the design of whether or not to keep existing trails or cut new trails. So our process started a year ago with a public open house. Before we ever put pen to paper, we had an open house. I think there were about 80 attendees, and we gathered a lot of good feedback from the community. Different user groups were well represented at the open house, and that feedback and that information helped us to develop a program for the park, meaning different types of uses to propose. Following that program development, we put together 3 different design alternatives, which are in the report. Those really went from kind of a low impact to a medium impact to a heavy impact in terms of adding improvements or making changes to the park. Once we developed those alternatives, the Park District formulated a focus group. A few representatives are here this evening from that focus group, and we went into more detail about how to work through those alternatives and come to a final master plan. Now, that's obviously still in draft format. We put that together, and then after that was developed, we added a cost estimate to that and wrote the final report. A part of our process included an architect, Scott Edwards and Associates, putting together an assessment of the farmhouse and the outbuildings. That's included in the appendix, and they also looked at a way to better organize the parking lot at the farmhouse. Thinking about priorities for improvements, our cost estimate for 2024 dollars came in at close to $2 million to implement all of the improvements that are shown in the design. I don't think that's going to happen year one, nor is that ever meant to happen in a master plan. A master plan is really a vision for the next 15, 20, beyond years for what this park can become. And so the way that really the improvements should be looked at, in our opinion, is number one, safety and security. We believe that is the first thing that the park district should spend money on. Improvements for safety and security, that's paramount. Number two, improving existing facilities, trails, parking lots, those types of facilities that are already there. They can be better organized. Wayfinding signage is critical. And then the third priority would be new improvements. Things like we have a nature playground, we have an off-leash dog area, fenced dog area. We have vault toilets shown at some of the trailheads. We have picnic shelters, those sorts of improvements. In discussions with the park district, we also, thought that if and when any fundraising occurs by a special interest group to add new improvements, that fundraising, could allow some of those new improvements to leapfrog, updates to existing improvements. So that's all documented in the report. I think that's a pretty broad overview of where we've been and what we've come to. So I guess I would open it for questions now.
So there's a lot of things that are in the master plan that sort of boggles my mind a bit. And I don't know if we pursue a process where we actually try to include it in the master plan or revise it, or if we just, accept the master plan as it is and then do other things as they come up. But most of those things are what I believe would fall under our special services. So they'd be things that would be revenue generating. I see there's a human obstacle course in the plan, which is, to me, absolutely bizarre. They're not very popular. They're usually not used more than once a year for a special event, and then they sit there and rot. But something that would have extensive use, and I think would be a very good business plan for us, would be like a horse obstacle course. These are things that people who train their horses to trail ride, which we have 325-acre park that they're trail riding in, typically pay somewhere between, I believe, $40 and $80 for a 1 to 2 hour stint. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
And there's two. There's one in, I think, Mount Hood Equestrian Center, so an hour and a half or so away. There's another one in the Perrydale. There's one in the Perrydale. I think it's on private property. And they're booked solid spring, summer, fall. So if you pencil out the math for that, I think it costs anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 to build. We definitely have the space, $40,000 to $80,000 to build.
40 to 80.
Yeah. So to me, that's just a no-brainer thing that should be included in this, and I think we could generate a lot of revenue, and then that revenue could go towards the more expensive things like the fencing, the gates, the video, the improvements to the trail to hopefully make part of the trail system year-round for all users. I think that would be ideal. Another thing that's not in here would be a covered arena. Doesn't have to be an indoor area, but a covered arena that's open for rental use. Could have like a key code, and people will pay for a covered arena for something that's municipally owned, because right now, there's nothing like that. Again, you're going hours either direction to find something that's like that. All you can get is private property, but typically something like that would have to require relationship with a barn owner. So someone wanted to maybe run a clinic or classes or something like that in a covered arena. This would give them the opportunity. Horse therapy is another thing. A lot of people want to do horse therapy. There's only a couple places in the area that do them, but they control their own barn, right? So you can't get in there. There's also a lot of grant money available in that world. And then the other thing that would be, I think, a very easy revenue generator, especially during the summer, trails are working, would be advertising group clinics. In the horse world, there's group clinicians that come out. They'll do a 2-day or 3-day clinic. Riders will pay something like $400 to $600 per rider. These are like traveling horse trainers that do this. And then something like a quarter to a half sometimes of that fee goes directly to the location that hosts them. So it would just be a matter of, having them register, having them pay, and then giving them a designated parking area or something like that to use the trail system. So those are the types of things that, I read through this, and there's a lot in the public comment, especially of how are we going to pay for this and so on and so forth, but yet we didn't put anything in here at all about the revenue generation, what I call just the no-brainer things that we can do that will that can fall under our special district, that can provide a service that will be wildly popular, that's not in this area at all. People are driving hours for these things, and we're in one of the biggest equestrian hubs in the entire state, Yamhill, Clackamas, and Washington County. So, I'd like to see that kind of thing added here, and then we also staff to be able to do business planning and be able to develop a plan where we can work with those who are fundraising, maybe matching the funds, do something like that, make it practical, make it something that's not a burden on our staff, but something that will bring in revenue and then give us the ability to do some of these other changes. Have you done things like this in your master planning process where you're doing like special service sort of?
Yes, it can really be a robust economic development assessment, which is something that we don't typically do in-house. We're the designers.
Okay.
We design the site, right?
Mm-hmm.
And plan the site. We can certainly suggest different revenue generating opportunities, and there are a handful of those in the report. If you'd like, I can go through
Yeah.
list. So, human obstacle course is not in the plan. That was an option that was presented at the open house. That's not in the plan. The horse obstacle course was considered, but I will say we basically finished our design. When we finished our design for the final preferred master plan, it included bikes. And at that time, the park was still, in our minds, going to allow mountain biking and be more, I guess, less of a equestrian focus, more of a general public, meaning equestrian, mountain biking, hiking, the playground, the dog park, the viewpoints. There's some incredible views up there on the north end. You can see 3 different mountain peaks. So in the public feedback that we got, in the focus group comments that we got, there was a lot of, I guess, feedback and suggestions about thinking about the general public at large instead of focusing on equestrians. Sure, we could absolutely, if the park district wants to put in a covered arena, there's plenty of space to do that up there. The obstacle course, I think that's a great idea. If the park district wants this to become a equestrian focused park, an obstacle course, I mean, there's plenty of room to do that, and clearly there's a lot of advocates and there's fundraising going on already for those improvements. If that's something that, you know, CPRD wants to add, it's a very simple thing for us to add into the report. We wouldn't at this stage provide detailed design for that, we would just specify where that's gonna happen, you know, a zone for that.
I think what you were asking for is a feasibility study rather than a master plan. They're just looking at the site based on what everybody had said at those meetings. And the money piece of it, I don't think typically in a master plan you would put in what the cost of all the improvements are, would you?
Well, we did a cost estimate
Yeah.
for all the improvements that were listed. It's very general.
Right.
Nothing's designed.
Right.
In terms of redesigning, and we all know the equestrian parking lot needs to be redesigned and better laid out for trucks and trailers, designated spaces for trucks and trailers compared to general passenger cars. We didn't get into the details of that, so our cost estimate is pretty general, but you know, we don't look at, you know, what's it gonna generate in terms of access for a user to come and use the horse obstacle course. That's not something that we would really know. I mean, we could do some research on that and look into that, but you know, the forecasting of that and what's the local demand for that, and what kind of prices could that, you know, what revenue could that generate? That's really not something that we're the ones that would be doing that. It's more of an economic development analysis. There's groups that do that specifically.
And I think we have to be really careful about making sure that we are focusing on district people. It's district dollars that pay for all of these improvements. So if you're gonna fundraise and you're gonna raise all the money, that's great, but we still have to make sure that we're serving the people of the district and not everybody from Albany or all the rest of Clackamas County. You know, we have, all I'm saying is, those are the people that are paying the taxes, and so we need to make sure that we're not just like gonna throw all this money in for people that are not inside of this district. So I just think we have to be really careful, because what you're talking about, yeah, it's gonna cost a lot, it will generate revenue, but you're gonna need to have like a feasibility study before you would do any one of those items to say, sure, you've got a room full of people that said they'll come, but how often are they gonna come? How much is it gonna cost? How much is it gonna take to maintain? And then how much are you gonna raise in revenue? Because if we're gonna be spending like district tax dollars on people outside of the district, I think it's gonna be a problem.
Dawn, do we have people outside the district using our swimming pool?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, that's it, that's all I need.
we have a huge amount of out-of-district use. In some instances, like with the golf course, that was brought up early on, we do have an extra fee. And the reason we did that is because we did use the tax dollars for that. So we thought that in-district people would be able to utilize that for less, and out-of-district would utilize it for more. I just want to add, I remember back when we built Jakewood Park, we had estimates and a grant that was going to be $180,000. I remember that because I brought a proposal with revenue generating, and it was close to $1 million. The board went berserk. They said, how in the world are we going to afford this? There's no possible way. Well, it's gotten built, it's been operating, and it's made a large input into the community. Not only the community, but the district as a whole. We have people coming in town all the time from Pennsylvania, Texas, all over. The same thing with the cultural center. I remember Mike McBride saying, where is this money coming from? And I guess the problem is not the money. Money is not the issue. The issue is people. Can we come together? Can we develop something not only for the community? First of all, we have an obligation for the community. We're doing that. But after the community, what my experience has been is if it's good for the community, guess what? Everybody outside the community wants to use it too, and they come in. There's just no way to stop it. So there's a lot of opportunities, but it's not easy. It will not be easy, but I think with people working together, that park will become just like Jaquith, Crater, the cultural center, the swimming pool, all of those things. It'll become a jewel for the community. But people have to make it, and we have to work together. And that's rather than this tension. I'm going to say that there is opportunities in Oregon. I think it was discussed at the meeting about biking opportunities versus equestrian opportunities. There's many more biking opportunities than there are equestrian opportunities. That's a given. There's no doubt about it. We separated bikes and equestrians in the beginning because they don't get along. They never have, they never will. I don't care what you do. You can put up all the signs you want. You can do whatever you want. It's just not gonna happen. I would have liked to have seen us keep bikes there. I'm not gonna say that I wouldn't, but I wanted them separated. And eventually, when we had a place for bikes, we could separate them. But the board decided that it was gonna be equestrian. I can't say you made a bad decision because I think based on the plan, based on that, what we hear out here, I see no reason why it can't work. It's just a matter of setting. One of the things is money. We have, and I agree with the priorities that was set up in the master plan, I always agree. First priority is safety first. No question about it. Second priority is taking care of what we have and making sure. The last priority would be these type things. Now, they're important in the development of that facility. We have a group out there now raising $25,000. One of the horse training area was what, 48,000 or 70-something thousand? So we're almost halfway there. Where's the money coming from? We get 1.4 million, not always, but over an average of about 7 to 10 years. We get each year $1.4 million to spend. In the past,
Are we talking about SDCs?
yes,
Okay.
in the past, we've had about $1 million of that put into the loans. They're going away. We only have one left, and that will be about 400,000. So we've got about $1 million to spend each year in developing, and we can only use SDCs for what? We can't use it for repair and replacement. We cannot use it, we can only use it for increase or multi-amount of money. Now, there's a lot of things that we need. I'm not, as the board is aware, I think at the last meeting, I told you, we have roughly $16 million in cost of projects over the next 3 years. Of that 16 million, 8 million is coming from external sources, that is grants, other type money. About 8 million is coming from us. And you say, okay, 8 million and you only got $1 million a year, that's 3 million, you're still 5 million short. That's true. But if you remember, we set out a number of years ago, 5 or 8 years ago, we set out where we were going and what we were gonna do. We had ending balances. And those ending balances is what we're gonna use to make up that difference. And we have that in our budget now. And I explained how that all works with the contingency and those type things. There's no reason we cannot achieve. Will this be done overnight? No. An example, the cultural center. We started working on that, like Mike McBride said, where's the money coming from? That's been about $11 million, if I'm not, 11 to 13.
But that was all privately raised.
Yes.
17 million privately raised.
Right, it was all privately raised. And, of course, that, I think the one thing we have to do is not keep putting or throwing obstacles in the way. Try to find a way to get it accomplished. And it won't happen overnight. There's no possible way that it can happen overnight. It'll be a long haul, but you need direction. This master plan gives us some of that direction. The master plan will change. I guarantee you in the next 5 years it will change. There's no such thing. Nothing should be in stone. This will change over the years and should change. Just as we have changed, if you remember, we have a master plan for Ewing Young Park. We've already changed some of it. We had a master plan for the trails. We also, phase 1 of the trails, that's changed. Opportunities come up and things change. We had a master plan for the aquatic center, I remember. When I say a master plan, we had ideas. We knew what we wanted. And I agree with your analogies. We built that aquatic center with what in mind, Jim?
to break even at least,
And,
and to provide something for everyone.
right, and we're one of the few facilities, not in Oregon, but in the United States that is doing that.
And we do charge out of district for that, just so
Yes,
some people know.
Good deal.
but we are one of the few, and it's because of people's hard work. There are many people that contributed to that. Lisa, you were part of that. And many people worked hard in accomplishing that. So, I'll end.
I just wanna make sure that anybody watching this video or anybody sitting in here doesn't think that because you own a horse or because you wanna hike and you wanna use Bob and Chris Riley Park, that there's gonna be a fee associated with it. It will only be for these special, events or services.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say, we don't know that yet, and the reason I say that, and on page 2 in this report, it talks about it, you know, that this is basically a vision and a guide. Like Don was alluding to, things can change, fees can change. I remember, and Dana knows that I know a lot about that park and the ditches in that park. And they used to have, before we came on, they had cards that they purchased to get into the park, you know, different areas with their horses. So, you know, things change, so we need to understand that. John, I thought we put a fence up on your area there. They can get across. Is that down now?
No, there was 200-foot sections along the 1,900-foot boundary.
Okay.
It blocked off where they were getting.
They're going across your riding across your property into the
Yeah,
park.
well, that's not happening anymore. Those the
Good.
fences and the remnants are still there, and they function that way.
You talked about the number one thing, safety and security, and you covered that in here. What would you see would be the number one thing that you think that we should do as a district from a safety and security standpoint?
Controlling access to the parking areas and not allowing people to park after hours, I think is probably the number one thing. I believe CPRD is doing that already, but that's manual. Somebody has to open the gate in the morning and somebody has to close it at night. There are systems where, you know, automated, there's power at the farmhouse, obviously, there's power at the equestrian facility, or at least there's a meter socket up there.
There's power there.
Yeah, there's not power at Bob's Corner, but there are solar systems for gates that if it's only opening twice, or it's opening once a day and it's closing once a day, it doesn't take a lot of juice in a battery, you know, solar powered battery to open those gates.
Thanks, because Don alluded to costs, and I'm looking at this, and I read through the draft. And one of the things in the draft that was in here was all the public meetings and stuff you had to create this draft. I really don't want to spend more funding on this from a park district standpoint. You talked about, you know, viability studies and so on, if we're gonna do arena, whatever they're gonna do down the road. But I'd like this to come to conclusion. We did an environmental study, we did this park study, we had architects involved and so on and so forth. If we're gonna spend money, nothing against you, you guys did a good job.
Thanks.
Is that I'd rather see it spent in another way into the park. Because I think you basically covered quite a bit and listened to the folks that were talking. And that's just my opinion. The other thing is that I know that, you know, I look at, when I go through the board packet, I look at the number of hours being spent in different properties, different parks. And just so you know that the Rilee property is probably a number of man hours is within the top 5 every time, if not the top 3. So we have done a lot of work up there that's costing district taxpayers money, but also improving the trails up there. So I just want people to know that, because we've got quite a large district with quite a large number of, you know, projects and places for people to go. So I do appreciate everybody's input in this. I do appreciate what you guys have done. But I think if we're going to move on, we would need to do separate studies on those separate things that Lisa was alluding to. The other part of this is that this is great to see that there's a group that wants to do a 501c3 and the fundraising and so on and so forth, and they have ideas. But like any of the 501c3s, I think the district's gonna have to look at that either in a contract or run it through our attorneys and so on and so forth to make sure everything's cool and great. And that, the other thing on the 501c3, sometimes, and I've seen this happen before, is that all of a sudden they say, hey, we are the park. And the public's the park, so everybody's gotta remember that. But I think this here is a great start for fundraising and so on. It's just, you gotta look at liability and all those other things involved with that, so.
I think it's similar to what you did with the culture center.
Right,
Totally.
right, and that's working out great.
Yeah.
So, I just wanna make sure everybody knows that. So, I think that's all I have to say.
I have a question. So, Dawn, when we decide that we're gonna adopt this, if we decide we're gonna adopt this, and we decide we're gonna build this feature or that feature, who actually does the building? Who actually, do we contract that out?
What sometimes we'll contract it out, we may do some of it in-house.
Okay.
We may, a lot of times we'll go out and try to get stuff donated, contractors and other type stuff. We've done a lot of that. I do know that there are contractors that live up there that would step forward, I believe.
We
Now,
have a list.
We have a list, we
We
know
have a
people.
list already knocking down my door.
Exactly.
okay, I just think they would. But regardless, we have to go through a process, from the legal process anyway. For instance, someone says, well, I'll do it, and it's gonna cost us $100,000, but they'll do it for like $40,000 because it's over a certain amount. I've got to go through the process, even though they'll do it, the law doesn't allow me. So I've got to do that.
So, my next question is hypothetically, if we decided, okay, we have got a group of people here who've raised X amount of dollars for, let's just say, obstacle courses, and they decided they would like to do that, and then the board approved that, then we would just figure out how we're gonna get it done, and, okay. And no matter what's in this plan here, is that correct?
Well,
Safety first.
yeah, as long as it doesn't interfere with safety or anything, but most of those things don't. That's not an issue. The other issue is we would need to make an amendment, like there's certain areas that we're going to develop, not develop. Remember, at all the hearings, the one thing I've always heard is that there should always be some farming in that particular facility. That was brought out loud and clear. So we should honor that because of the type property, but we can do that and still do these other type things as well.
Jason, some of the things you're talking about, they would go to staff first. Because we're policy, so we're not gonna, plan things and do that, that's staff, and then staff would bring whatever they bring to the staff. These folks wouldn't bring it to us, they bring it to the staff, and the staff would come to us for approval, whether it's a
Got it.
budget item, something like that, contract.
Got it.
How, if, I mean, I would like to continue fundraising. I mean, we've already got what we've got in a matter of a couple of weeks, so I'm quite optimistic that could increase. Where do we go from there to help you guys with whatever you decide? You said it goes to staff, so we don't bring anything to you guys?
Now, you would go to staff in most cases, and then for projects, and then the staff would say, yeah, and then they check it out,
Okay,
because we're not in that business,
gotcha.
and then they would bring it to us. So that's, you go to Casey or Don or whoever
Okay.
is gonna run that, so.
Probably
Okay.
Brian.
If there were, the things that I was seeing in some of those things, or what they mentioned as well, those would be special services, so would that be something, Julie, do you do business planning, look at
Yeah, we
these
work
kinds
with,
of things, so,
yeah, we work with outside organizations, agencies with and with contracts,
mhm.
those kinds of things.
Cause I think, I think a feasibility study for something like a horse obstacle course, I think is kind of a waste of time and money. I think looking at the business planning, of what the rates are, how booked they are, where the locations are, this kind of thing, you're gonna find out pretty quick that there's a big gap in the market and that's something that people want. So I think that's just a business plan type of thing. The reason I mention that is because it's just cheap. I mean, it's cheap compared to some of the other things that could be done. So when we're looking at if we have matching funds or fundraising or whatever going on. And it's similar to, my understanding is what we're doing, not just at the cultural center, the BMX folks. They raise their money, they put their work in, they do their stuff, and they have their footprint at Ewing Young. But they just did an expansion, I think, last year, and so we see these things happen a lot.
What you have to be careful of is the money will be there to do the three things you talked about. That's not an issue. But the issue is, can our budget, can we maintain that with the current staff? Or do we have to add additional staff, which is an issue? Sometimes the revenue will come in to allow that to occur. Then the second question is, what is the life expectancy? How much are we going to set aside because we've got to replace it at some point? We're getting to where that's gonna become a bigger issue as time goes by. We have always, in the past, because of the way we're set up, but things are changing. For instance, Tualatin Hills just went out for their operating budget. An example, they're at $131.30. In the state of Oregon, there's roughly 13 park and rec agencies that is full service. Of those 13, we're one of them. The average tax rate that they get in is 99 cents. Our tax rate is 90 cents. We're 9 cents below the average. Now, why can we do the things that we do? And what's the difference between us and the others? The amount of money we bring in far exceeds what they bring in. Our business plan and our business is much better than theirs. And we've developed that over the years, ever since 1986. That's the difference between us and them. That's why we're hanging on. Now, when does that stop? Because you can only go so far. I don't have the answer. Could it continue? Yes. But repair and replacement, how does the school district repair and replace their schools and equipment? They go out for bonds. How does the city do it? They go out for bonds. We've passed 2 bonds. One bond was to build the first pool. The second bond was to replace the first pool that we built. That's the only 2 bonds that we've ever passed.
Hey, Don, have we ever considered farming that great big hayfield that's right next to Bob, that's part of Bob and Crystal Riley Park? Have we ever considered doing the work? And
I can answer that.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, we got Harvey doing most of the agricultural work up there right now, but that was too steep for him to do. And so we worked out a deal with a nearby neighbor to where, and mainly we were concerned with fire hazard. I mean, you're not gonna make a lot of money off that hay that there's like, and we were concerned about the fire hazard, so we wanted to have someone cut it. We didn't have those machines to do that, so he's able to do it for us. So that's kind of how that's all worked out. Whether economically we could do something different, it's something you'd have to get a farmer who might be interested in that. Am I right, Dana? Very good.
It's too steep for Steve.
Yeah, so that's why we do it the way we do it.
Okay. And I will add to that, Jim, historically, we used it for reenactments, open field, parking, overflow parking for trailers in the
Right.
summertime. So it was nice to have that field there for, events, parking, different things that you can do there, dog trials, etc.
Okay.
But to get back to what Don was saying, so the public knows, since I've been with the district over 40 years now. We built playgrounds here 40 years ago that need to be replaced. And a new playground is gonna cost upwards to $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 for a playground structure and amenities and ADA and so on and so forth. And those are coming to us now. You got a school commence that we'd like to replace the playground, or add to the playground, whatever. But, ones that are even older than that, so we really gotta watch out for all those big HVAC units and all that other stuff, because that's, as you know, the economy's not our friend right now, and everything costs a lot of money. So, just gotta be careful. That's why it's so important to have people that wanna go out and fundraise, and know people
Right.
that can help the district to get what they need. Thanks.
Trying to bring you money, wanna bring you money.
Yeah.
Money, money, money.
Well, and I think to pair it off of what Don was saying is what makes us successful to a large degree is our special services, so the golf, the aquatic center, the softball fields at Jakewood, tournaments all summer long. And so I think if we have the low hanging fruit where we know we can do something that will be a revenue generator, especially at a 325 acre park, where there's a lot going on and there's a lot of trails to maintain, there's a lot of signs, a lot of fences, just the basic things. We need to, I think it's incumbent on us to pursue those. I don't think it really should be an option. I think it should be, we do it if we have a business plan that makes sense.
Outdoor education is going to grow.
Yes.
It is
Yes.
growing now,
Yep.
more and more in all sectors. Julie and I have talked about it, and we're moving that way with the more camps. I think we've had more camps this year than ever
Yeah, we did.
before. That's an ideal spot
Yeah.
for those type situations. It's just perfect. We not only have that area, we have down by the river as well. We have about 90 acres down there. So, yes, we'll be able to keep expanding and to go. But my point is, and I want to say that we've got to make sure that we don't grow so big that we lose perspective and we're not able to replace and repair what we have. And the only place we can do that is out of the general fund. For instance, this year, used to in the general fund, I could see some years where we would have $1 million left over. That's slowly diminishing. This year, we'll probably be close, the last couple of years, about $100,000, but we haven't gone the other way yet. We've stayed on the right side so far. And I think if the district is smart, they'll be able to do that for another 5 years. After 5 years, then we need to make plans for that, to make sure that we're there. So
So it sounds like it's imperative that we are having these special things like the pool and potentially the horses where we're making money to be
Well,
able to pay for these things.
our job is not to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to, first of all, provide service.
Mm-hmm.
What we did, and Jim was part of it as well, we said we're splitting the agency into two areas. One is basic service. Basic service is the maintenance and the upkeep of what we have. That will be paid for by taxes. Because upkeep of a playground, anyone can use it. Upkeep of a ball field, anyone can use it. Now, what we also said was we will develop special services. Special service is that area. For instance, special service is if you want to use the ball field, but you want it cut regularly, you want it mowed every 2 days, you want it lined off, you want it drugged, then that's special service. Who's going to pay for that? We set up with the idea that the user will pay for that. So that's what special services is. So you have basic service and you have special service. When we initiated it, there was discussion, well, it'll never work. They won't pay it. My thought is, if you're able to get people's time, which is the greatest gift we have, when people give up their time. The second, when they give up their time and they're willing to open up their pocketbooks and give their money, we must be doing something right. Because people don't do that when you're doing it wrong. Or when you're doing something wrong, people shut their wallets and they walk away. So we're doing something right. Not always everything, but something. And that's what I tried to instill in the staff. That is, are we doing the right thing? And second of all, are we doing it the right way? Doing the right thing is leadership. Doing things the right way is management. Sometimes they conflict, but you should always try to do both.
So I guess, kind of on that point, I don't want this trail system to be something we charge for people to park and to hike it. I want this is an incredible 320 some odd acres. And I want the trails to be upkept. I want signage, the safety for the community with the automatic gates, all those things. And I think you can better achieve that if you have the ability to create a special service up there. For example, the group clinics. It would be the same as what you're saying with the softball field, right?
Right.
They have a tournament coming in, they want to use it for 2 days, but they want, the conditions, the enough parking.
Exactly.
So
Special services.
But if we advertise for that, with the trails that already exist, with the park that already exists, we will collect a lot of money on it, and that money can go to continue bettering that park. So the safety, the fencing, the trails, and I think not doing it is a bit mind-boggling. And I guess that's where my frustration lies, is we've had this park for 10 years, and it's a little weird to see that in 10 years, we've maintained what we've had, but we haven't done the development pieces, the things that, I think we could have done or should have done. And so, but that's neither here nor there, that's history. But I think we need to start doing those, and that includes the outdoor school, the farm improvements, the viewpoints, the hiking trails. So it's not just a horse thing, but the horse thing specifically is a huge, huge gap we have in this area. being a hub for the Wilsonville Road, Yamhill County, Clackamas, Washington County equestrians. I'm telling you, you build this, they will come. And it'll be a service that we see for in-district people, out-of-district people, and it's going to help fund all the other things we need to do in this park. And I understand it's not necessarily a master plan thing, but it is a special service thing, it is a business plan thing. It's how do we make the nuts and bolts work? You know, what's the life of a obstacle course, how much, that totally makes sense. But, just like we're developing some of the stuff at the farmhouse, I think we should also be, developing events up there as well. I know we're limited to, is it 100 people based on the Yamhill County
100 people.
regulation? Still, those mid-size weddings and stuff like that are under 100 people, those are big. I think that's another thing where we need to advertise it, have more special services. And if we have good parking, good signage, gates, all the safety stuff done, we're talking about some of the most beautiful land in the entire county, and this is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I just think we need to do more with this park. I think it's incumbent on us. Yeah.
And I would also say that our experience with baseball and softball in our community and other activities through special services is that does bring money into our community from outside the community, because they're shopping at Fred Meyer's, they're eating at Subway, they're really spending money in our community. And I don't think that's talked about enough. We have softball and baseball tournaments for 8 months basically out of the year, and it brings a lot of tourism dollars, I guess you would call them. But on a Saturday and Sunday, it does, you will see more people in our community spending money, and I really like to see, that's kind of important to us in special services too, that we're helping our community.
Well, the same for the cultural center, for the
Yeah.
events we have there, the aquatic center,
Yeah.
the golf course.
Yeah, sports.
I mean, so
Yeah.
even if 3/4 of our golfers are outside of our district, they're spending their money here. It's economic advancement. So, I'll shut up. Anyone else? Anything to talk about? This is the time, we're here just to talk. I mean, it's only 7:17, so. I mean, we should just go for 2 more hours at least.
Matt,
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
chime in.
Yeah.
On page 35, we talk about next steps, and we do address some of the fundraising opportunities. Weddings, outdoor school, equestrian classes, family-focused nature exposure tours. Those are all things that could take place, and it's certainly not restrictive or limited to those items. And I would recommend you leave it open-ended. I wouldn't restrict the master plan. I mean, Don and Jim talked about it, this is a pretty fluid document. 10 years ago, nobody had pickleball courts in their master plans, and now everybody in the state wants to build one. I'm working on 3 of them right now. So, it's gonna be a fluid, dynamic, planning parks is a very dynamic process, and I would keep it, in my recommendation, open-ended, and open-minded in terms of the improvements that can take place up there.
So the one last question I have for you, and this might be more for staff, but I'll just throw it this general direction, is we've seen a lot more use in this park recently. So we've had the parking area overrun and people having to take their trailer home because there's nowhere to park. A lot of people means there's no bathrooms, right? Stuff like that. So the master plan doesn't really deal with interim stop gaps. Is that something we just address that with staff and say, hey, we need to get some porta potties up there? I mean,
They're up there, man.
'cause- What's that?
They're up there,
They're up there?
On both sides of the road?
Where are they?
right in the main gravel parking lot, it's serviced every week.
At the horse area?
At
The
the
main gravel parking lot.
But not.
Farmhouse.
Oh, at the
Okay, it's
farmhouse,
down
yeah.
to
that's
the
the-
farmhouse, okay.
Well, technically, I have a horse trailer, so I do have a porta potty.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the main turnaround, the trailer area, so now that equestrians feel safe to ride there, it's exploded. And so I don't know if we need to do some sort of formal analysis to illustrate that, but it is. And so, stuff like that, like they need enough space to park, cars parking in the middle of the turnaround is, so these are like the urgent things that we probably need to get on quick in terms of like safety and use.
Yeah, some of that stopgap things, we've got vault toilets shown in the master plan,
Mhm.
but it's kind of an operations and maintenance item. Get porta potties up there until a vault toilet can come in. Organizing the parking area, I think a lot could be done with signage, railroad ties, to show people this is a parking space. And, some of that could be done pretty quickly. And very inexpensive to do those types of things.
Don, have we ever considered, maybe putting parking on the opposite side of the road? So that the horses that wanna use that side, the people that wanna use that side of the road don't have to cross the road?
You talking across from the horse parking? No.
Yes.
Gets pretty steep pretty quick.
Is it?
We parked 200 trailers in that hayfield, because we had the posse rides on that side.
Okay.
And so you can park 200 trailers, or 200 people, before it starts to slow down. So it's pretty flat on that upper,
In the field, yeah, not right across from the parking. It's
well, between Bob's Corner
yes.
and the trailer
Yes.
area, that's where we used access for parking in there.
Okay.
I would say too, somebody mentioned it, that a major safety concern in my mind is the crossings. Now that equestrians are allowed to cross and use both sides, that has to be signed. Vehicles need to know that those are crossings, and there's no signage at all right now. I would start the conversation with the county immediately on that, if equestrians are gonna be allowed to cross.
Don, is that something that you can work on?
We can call the county, tell them, and
Yeah.
see what they
Mary
recommend.
lives right up there.
Yeah.
I mean, she should realize that, so,
Yeah.
if we call Camp Friday and just see what we gotta do.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know if they can do a flashing yellow light or something?
I don't think it needs that, it just needs some signs and possibly some paint across the road that says if horse crossing, or I don't know what kind of things that
Yeah.
they're gonna be wearing.
Yeah, hikers.
Yeah.
And and definitely don't put them on corners. I know there's access from Bob's Corner across, not always the best place to put the crossing. We've identified 3 different spots.
Two.
Two.
And we looked at sight lines, that's pretty critical. Distances from corners, and even thinking about sun shadow, you don't want a crossing in a shadow when a car's coming from the sun. So we looked at all those and we recommended 2 locations.
That's a 35-mile-an-hour road, right?
Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, boy, that's funny. Speed bumps?
Okay, well.
Can I make a comment? Am I allowed to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, this is my first time on these meetings, and I know this is a vision meeting and nothing so on. I'm trying to figure out, as I'm hearing everybody talk and your plans, is this a park of nature to enjoy and ride? Or I hear in the background bubbling up that this is turning into a commercial venture, from the paved for the course, an arena for events, weddings and all that. And these, there's room up there, and I don't know if there's room to have a commercial type property, because that's what it's gonna turn into for all these fee events, kinda like the softball parks are, that's commercial. Or is it just gonna be nature for people to enjoy, ride their horses, and not have maybe possibly conflicting things down the road?
All of the above. It's over 300 acres, so there's a farmhouse that would host outdoor schools and potentially
Weddings.
small events.
Okay.
There's hiking trails. There's likely to be a dog area potentially. There's people who hike with their dogs, and then there's equestrians who are also sharing the trails, so there's, it's not just one thing. But when you're looking at the fact that the equestrians are there, and there's a big need for a trail system and for these other services, they're already there, so I think it makes sense to monetize that with a special service, especially if that can help pay for the improvements to the park. So that's just my statement, that's not anything else. Okay, well, is there any other,
I can say one of the things when working with the county back in the day, you know, I basically met all the county's requirements and took care of that before I left, before I retired. But one of the big problems with the groups and so on that's gonna have to be solved, we did a traffic study and so on, but the neighbors didn't like all the traffic of these events. And Dana can allude to that too. So you need to be really careful how you plan up there, because you may have all these folks that are interested in equestrian, but they may not be as interested in the amount of traffic that it's gonna take for big special events to come in. So you just need to be cognizant of that. I'm not saying don't do something, but you need to be really cognizant of that.
Well, I think you need to talk to the neighbors. I mean, we have to talk to people and let them know that's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's, people don't like a lot of traffic. And so, and especially when these people that are using the park aren't abating the traffic laws. And that
That's
will
one of the
happen.
reasons why you move out in the country, is not to have the traffic.
Right, and so now you've got the
Yeah,
traffic.
now we've got
So
it.
you just gotta be really cognizant of that. I'm just telling you, that's what came back at us last time.
I think you've got that now, Jim, with just people that are hiking and using the park.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it, I'm just saying.
And for the Tashiras who live right by the trailer in area, at least we don't have the all-night cars.
At least we have the
yeah,
gate
plus
closed,
it's-
and I don't have to
being
stop
locked
drugs
down.
happening, yeah, that's nice.
I think, you know.
Whoever finally
it is
decided to
what
put
it
the
is.
gate, I
Kudos, yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
no, it was thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a godsend.
It was because she asked for it, we approved it, and Dawn got it done.
Thank
So I
you.
was tired of stopping in front of your house and see the kids and burning.
unless the
and
board
stuff.
has anything else
Yeah.
to discuss, I'm gonna close the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so what's your name again? Bland.